My disclaimer is the reason I do not give handouts on the front end because I have been through seminars for I don't know how many years. First thing I do is I get the handouts and I check the last page and it says it's 60 slides over 10 pages and I start the countdown because I'm like, okay, got 60 slides. I don't want you to do that. I want you to sit, listen, and learn and know that you'll get the full handouts after the presentation because I think there's some very, very important information in here that's going to really help you as a nursing home administrator. So a little bit about me. I'm Mary Brinkley, the Executive Director of Leading Age Oklahoma, and we're a trade association that represents long-term care providers across the continuum of care. All of our members are not-for-profit providers, and then we have subscriber members that are for-profit, and we'll get more into that later. But for all your purposes now, you just need to know that it's long-term care providers across the continuum of care. Nursing homes, assisted living, adult day, residential care, home care, advantage, waiver, hospice, because this long-term care umbrella is very big and broad. And I'll tell you a little bit about my journey as we go along. The best way to learn and remember something is with a story. So by the time I will finish in 2 hours, you will have had lots of stories. You're going to know lots of things. But for what I'm going to help educate you on, it's going to be like a case study. Been there, done that. I'm going to tell you what happened in my role as an administrator. And I'm going to tell you sometimes when I failed and sometimes when it was a success. So that's always good to know. We can learn from our mistakes and we can learn from someone else's successes just as much. So now we're going to dive in and get started. The former president of Leading Age, our national association, said in the future there's going to be 2 types of facilities, the excellent and the non-existent. And your vision, the trust you have in this profession, the bottom line of all of it is ethics. Your ethical standards are going to determine your success or failure. I will tell you, I know some outstanding administrators, high ethical standards. They do things the right way. And I'll tell you too, they get the benefit of the doubt in a survey process. If surveyors know you are doing it the right way, you have policies and procedures, you're going to have a better survey. If they want to see your policy and procedure book on that and you don't even have a policy on it, you don't even know what they're asking about, and you didn't even know that they were going to ask about it, it's not going to go as well. So there's an easy path to this and there's a harder path, and I'm going to tell you about the easy path. But before I get any farther, I want to talk about today's environment. Unprecedented. Since when was it? 1908 or 1912 when we had the Spanish flu? Who would have ever dreamed we'd be living in this world right now? But I'll tell you what's happened during this time. Long-term care has been on the front lines of all of this, and that can be good and bad. It's bad because we have more exposure, we have more risk, we have to be more careful, but it's also educated our nation and the general public about the essential role of our essential workers and the critical place that long-term care plays in society. So you can look at the bad in anything, but I can also see the opportunity in this. The opportunity that they're giving us more relief funds. Now, again, we just learned about some more that are coming through for long-term care. So while this is the most challenging time that we've ever seen in the history of the long-term care profession, we could also see that it could be an opportunity for the world to understand the importance of the long-term care profession. Because all too often in the past, we were just out there. People didn't know, people didn't understand, and all too often they didn't respect this profession like they should. So I do think it is an opportunity. So what's happened during COVID-19? Oh my gosh. We had our annual conference, the Leading Age Oklahoma Annual Conference, the state's largest long-term care conference, had over 600 provider attendees, 94 different exhibitors, total 218 exhibitors, and then speakers. We had almost 900 people at this conference. The second day of the conference, we get this word that there were some cases, some things happening. And all of a sudden, the health department wanted to meet with us to say, you know, it looks like this could be coming to the United States bigger, and it looks like it could be coming to our state. Well, that night, March 11th, was the first, the Thunder was playing the Utah Jazz, and they realized that one of the players was positive, and they emptied out the arena, and the rest is history. I actually got on a plane and went to a conference. And so I was on a plane with no contact, and at 10 o'clock at night, I turned back on my phone, and it's just blown up with all of this. So what happened when I got back? I started doing COVID-19 updates daily. Daily, I sent out a newsletter to all of our providers because daily the rules were changing. And daily, for 7 weeks, we did a daily update. And then finally, we transitioned to 3 or 4 times a week. But in between, I would catch myself having to push out some information. The rules are still changing. There's still executive orders, and there's waivers, CMS waivers federally on things. And I've always said that it's hard now, that it's really going to be a little bit harder when we have to put the pieces back together. What sticks, what doesn't? They changed this rule. This one's going to go away. This one's, not only is it going to remain in place, but we're going to add on to it. So we have a lot to learn. So in that same breath, I'm going to tell you, one of the most rewarding professions you could ever have would be long-term care. I've been there and done it as an administrator. And my heart goes out to those people that literally just collect a paycheck every day. They go to their job, they deal with these widgets, they do this little job, and they go home, and they got paid. But in long-term care, it's so much more than that. We go to work every day, and we change lives. We make a difference. We're there for the families, we're there for the residents, and we're there for the staff. So I've told people, if you want a job and a paycheck, you might consider the hotel industry. You can run a hotel. People are going to check in, check out. You're not going to have that big survey. You'll collect their money, and you're just going to, that'll be your life. But if you really want a job with really a sense of value and purpose, and if you have this in your heart, then the long-term care profession will be a great, rewarding place for you. What's required? You have to have a heart and passion for the profession. And if you do that with ethical standards, I promise you, you'll be a success. And I'll also tell you on top of this, if you have the heart, the passion, and the ethical standards, you can write your ticket. I get calls every single week. This facility administrator might retire. This one moved to another job. This one we're asking them to leave. Who do you know of that's good? So I'll tell you, send me your resume. I keep resumes on file. I do job placement in my spare time. But I love helping people get a job in long-term care. And I have placed a boatload of people in jobs in long-term care. Why? Because just like through this class, I could see it in them. I knew it, they had it in their heart. I knew they had the potential. And I knew that they could make a difference and contribute to this profession. So that's what this is all about. So now I'm going to give you my first little story. On my mom's side, there were 11 children, and my grandfather started to fail. Family got together and said, Dad needs to go to a nursing home. What are we going to do? So they found a nursing home, and they said, here's what we're going to do. There's 11 children. Every 11th day, each one of them was assigned to go visit my grandfather, so he would have a visitor every single day. Good plan. So my mom goes there on her first assigned day, and she took me with her. And we walk in there, and keep in mind, this was the nursing homes in the early 70s. And people were yelling out, and it was just a different world than it is now. If you weren't in a nursing home in the 70s, you don't know how much improvement has been made in long-term care through the Eden alternative and culture change and everything. Great strides. So anyway, we got into this nursing home, and my mom walked in there, and she did her little 5-minute visit and was talking to my grandfather. And I started hearing these people yelling and calling out. So I left the room and I walked in the room. I said, what do you need? And, oh, I need help. You know, a lot of people can call out, I need help. I want to go home. I'll help you. So I was going into the hallways, finding the staff. This person needs some help. And they were like, she always says that, and walked off. And I thought, well, that's not very nice. So anyway, my mom at the end of her 5 or 10 minute visit came to find me, and she said, we got to get out of here. And we left. We got in the car, and I told my mom, I said, so when do we get to come back? And she said, what do you mean? And I said, yeah, when do we get to come back? I'll come back with you. And she got this wonderful plan. Every 11th day when it was her day, she dropped me off at the front door. I would spend an hour and a half or 2 hours in the nursing home visiting these residents. And she would come in and pick me up, come in and say hi to her dad. Hi, goodbye, everything okay? Okay, let's go. And we left. And I loved that day at the nursing home. Well, after weeks of visits, I got in the car and I told my mom, I looked up at her and I said, I know what I want to be when I grow up. She said, what? I said, I just want to work in a nursing home. Now, how many kids say that this day? Nobody does. And she said, oh, heaven forbid. And that was the end of that. Well, then my grandfather died. And then I went on and graduated from high school, college, got a degree in finance. I did oil and gas abstracting, which most of you don't even know what that is. I didn't even know when I got the job. And I did that. And then I quit work and I had my 3 sons. And then it was time to go back to work, my second career. And I thought, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I thought, I just want to work in a nursing home. So I went through Administrators University, just like you. Only I did it a little different. Back then, there wasn't an AIT that was required. So I went to a nursing home and I said, could I come in 1 day a week and just shadow you? And the administrator looked at me and said, why in the world would you want to waste your time and do that? And I said, because I think I could learn. He said, I don't care. You can come in if you want. So I just was in there all day long. I'd be with him for a while. His wife worked in there too. I'd go to the nursing. I'd ask him some questions. I'd visit with the residents. And in that experience, I learned some very important things. I learned some best practices, what you need to do. But just as importantly, I thought to myself, I will never do this way. This is so wrong. This is bad. This is not productive. So just as importantly, I learned what not to do. So helpful hint, I'm going to, throughout this presentation, I'm going to give you lots of helpful hints. This is the first one. Helpful hint, do not dismiss your AIT process. It can be one of the most valuable learning experiences. And if Z is listening to me, yes, I say this. You can learn as much in your AIT process as you do in this class. The hands-on daily operations, what's working, what's not. If you're working with a preceptor that you really don't feel is giving you the experience, the opportunity, the information you need, change. Go to someone else. I know people that have spent their entire AIT program years ago putting in hours or writing down that they had hours. And you know what happened? They came out of that experience and they only cheated themselves. They really did, because it's a huge opportunity to learn, and I learned so much from the experience. So I learned a lot from that experience. But you know what is going to determine your success or failure in this job? Ethics. So we're going to start with this module on ethics and long-term care. So you're going to pass this test. Yes, you will. I sweat bullets. I studied and I thought, oh my gosh, you can pass it. Common sense can help you answer a lot of those questions if you listen and learn and read the materials. And then you're going to get your license. And I'm going to say this again. Once you have that license and put it on the wall, your ethics are going to determine if you're going to be successful in the profession, or unfortunately, in some cases, if you'll get to retain your license. Some people have lost their license because of unethical practices. So we're going to go on, and I'm going to tell you about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, so as a nursing home administrator, you're going to have lots of responsibilities. You're going to have a responsibility as a caregiver. Because you know what? The minute you get your license and put it on the wall, you assume responsibilities for the entire operations and the staff and what's going on in those operations. But don't let that scare you. The strength I came from looking around when I go to a seminar, a conference, and I looked at people, I thought, if they can do it, I can too. And look around this room. This is going to be your peer support. To this day, let me think of how long. I went through Administrators University over 30 years ago. And to this day, I still stay in touch with the administrators that were in that class. So look around this room. These are people that you'll be able to stay in touch with. That'll be a resource, a sounding board for you. And keep in mind, when you have a responsibility as a caregiver, I came into this with zero experience in nursing, none. So I really relied on my DON and those charge nurses. I needed to know everything because everyone in this room, I can tell you, someone in here probably is a nurse. Someone probably has a finance background. Someone might have an HR background. Someone might have a nursing home long-term care administrator background. Maybe you've been a assistant administrator, or maybe been the office person that literally behind the scenes was running a lot of the building. So you have to draw on all of the strengths in that building, because when you have a responsibility as a caregiver, you're going to have to know what that nursing department is doing. And I'll tell you this too, it's really hard to be that person that can wear that hat that has a strength in every area. So that's where you're really going to need to learn to empower other people. And we're going to talk about that. You can carry a heavy load and try to do it all, or you can empower those people around you, build a team, and you move forward together and you have great success. So you're also going to have a responsibility as an employer. I know some buildings where some of the management team, after 2 weeks, literally walked out. It really wasn't going well. So remember, those employees are your right hand. And I'm not saying you be soft with them and befriend them all. The best way to gain the respect of your entire staff is to be firm and for them to know that they're going to be ethical and always maintain that same posture with everyone. You start getting weak and someone comes to you, the true story, there's a great activity director at this one community. Everybody knew her. She is one of the best. So she went to the administrator and said, I really, really need some more money. I need some more money, or I just don't think I'm going to stay in this job. So this is an ethical question. Do you lose that best activity director that's holding your whole program together, or do you give her some more money? I don't want you to answer that out loud yet, because some of you are saying, give her the money, don't lose her. And others are saying, don't give her the money. Well, I would be the one that would say, don't give her the money. I'd say, you know what? If you really care about this job, I know the great job you're doing. We'll discuss this at your annual review. I really want to keep you. You're a great part of this team. And that's what he did with her. And he kept her. And she's still there now, 10 years later. Because one thing that is a definite in long-term care, there are no secrets. You give that one nurse, say, that little payment, oh, I've worked hard, I come in all the time when you're short, I need $1 an hour extra. I'll give it to you, but don't tell anyone. I promise you, everyone on that floor, probably within an hour to 2 hours, knows that that person got that raise. There are no secrets, so just keep in mind, open, honest. If you're honest, you will always have the respect of your employees, because they're going to know that you're going to treat everyone with fairness. We'll talk more about that later. So you need to take care of your team, and you build that team. Stephen Covey talks about from good to great, and he said everyone needs to get the right people on the bus. And when you get the right people on the bus, you can move the bus forward. So that's going to be one of your responsibilities as an employer, is to make sure you have the right people. And the other thing is, you're going to have responsibilities as a member of the community. And you're thinking, well, what does that have to do? What if I live in Guymond or I live in Guthrie, what does that mean with the community? It's everything. Because your referrals come in from the community. 40% of all referrals come in from family members of residents in your community. Volunteers come in. You want volunteers in your organization. Oh, that's great. But if you have a bad reputation in the community, you're not going to get those volunteers. You're not going to get those next residents. And for a lot of communities in Oklahoma, you're the single largest employer. You're a lifeline to that community. And you know what? If it's a nursing home that is really not doing very well, they could get decertified and they could get closed down. It would hurt the community, desperately. So it's really important that you're a good partner in the community. So this was each year, Z does a survey of administrators, and this was from 2018, and I think this is just important, some good facts to know. In the 2018 survey, 13% indicated that they would be an administrator for at least 5+ years. The reason for leaving, the threat of litigation. The reason for staying, the concern for the residents. 36% indicated that they would be an administrator for 10+ years. And 3 out of 4 administrators now have a 4-year degree since the change was implemented in 2001. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. We've been around working with this for years. In 2001, we eliminated the high school diploma requirement and replaced it with the 4-year degree. So every one of you have a 4-year degree, and this class has been full since then. And we're getting a great high caliber of people. But before, when we had a high school diploma, and no offense to any of those people, some people had a high school diploma, they worked in the nursing home when they were 16 as a nurse aide, worked up, they might have been an office aide, worked up, they might become the administrator. Today's nursing home is completely different than that nursing home in the 1970s. Everything. The legal environment, the financial environment, the regulatory environment, the reimbursement environment, it has all changed dramatically. So someone asked me one time, well, what difference does it make if I have a degree in, a degree in education? I said, you could basically name any degree out there, and I could tell you how it could be applicable to long-term care. You have critical thinking skills, decision-making skills, perseverance. You got through 4 years and got a degree. You know how to write. In Comp 1 and Comp 2, you had to write some papers. I could go on and on and on about how important your degree is and how it has really attracted a higher caliber of individuals. Unfortunately, we still struggle with this. As recently as a few years ago, they said, we're going to try to eliminate that requirement because there aren't enough administrators. Well, there are enough administrators. When I was licensed, we had over 1,500 administrators, and now we have, I think, between 700 and 800. But the thing about it is, back when I got licensed, we had 454 nursing homes, and now we have 302. So we have a third less. So we still have a good pool of administrators. And the other thing I will tell you, when you become an administrator and get that license in your hand, no one will have more job security than you if you're a good administrator. There will always be a job. I can tell you, I know a guy that worked in the maintenance department of a nursing home, and he actually moved up to be the director of environmental services. And they saw something in him and sent him to Administrators University. And then he worked in the office as part of the management team. He is now, got his administrator's license. He is now the CEO of a continuing care retirement community. Not only is he that, he is amazing. He's one of our state's best and brightest. He actually did work up through the ranks, and he learned it all. So, I mean, there's different paths, but I will tell you, learn all you can. So this tells about our high school diploma and how things have changed since then. There is a career ladder within the facility. How many of you, if you want to raise your hand, how many of you have worked in a facility in another capacity and now are thinking of moving up to administrator? A lot of you. Invaluable experience. And for those of you that have not worked in a facility, don't worry about that, because I was so intimidated in that class. I never worked in a facility, hadn't even been in one except when I was young and I visited my grandfather. So I was intimidated by that, but it just made me that much more hungry to learn it all. So for those of you that have the experience, it's great. For those of you that don't have it, don't worry about it. You'll catch on quickly. So now you have the college degree and the AIT program, you get Administrators University, and when you get your license, it's required that you get 24 hours of continuing education annually. And you're thinking, that's a have to, and I'm telling you, that's a get to. Select your credit hours carefully. If you were an HR director at that facility, you probably don't need to go get hours in HR. You probably know that. You know the turnover. You know some of the challenges with the HR department. If your weakness is finance, go get some education in finance. Seek out the education that's going to help you be a better administrator, a better, more well-rounded administrator. The other thing I'll tell you in my review of administrators, because I told you, you know, if you want to share your resume with me, I'll give you a business card, but I'll also look at that resume carefully. There are some administrators that have been licensed for years that will email me their resume and say, hey, I'm not working now. Here's my resume. If you hear of anything, I'll say, sure, send me your resume. One man worked at 7 different facilities in 3 years. One worked at, I think, 8 in 2 years. I mean, I could go on and on. And sometimes it's a bad fit, but there's also a trend there. So I'll give you a little hint. You need to interview your prospective employer as much as they're going to interview you. And we'll talk more about that, but that's very, very important to know that you're going to have a good fit wherever you land. It can help determine your success or failure. So what is the public's perception of long-term care? You guys probably know this. An AARP study indicated that 40% of the people that responded said that they would rather die than go to a nursing home. We've had a public outcry. Oh my gosh, how many times have you read it in the paper? Bad nursing home, someone eloped, they ended up dying in the heat, someone did something. How many times can you remember hearing that great story about the person that lived there the rest of their life, and it was a wonderful experience? Those don't make the news. And that's our job, is all of our job, is to make sure that we help tell the story of long-term care. True story. I was in Walmart one day and there was a girl behind me in line and she had a t-shirt on from a nursing home. And so of course I had to talk to her. I said, oh, I saw your t-shirt. Is that where you work? She said, yeah, I just finished my shift. We were short again. I didn't even get to sit down the entire shift. And she proceeded to tell a complete stranger in the checkout line at Walmart every bad thing that went on in that nursing home during her shift. And I sat there and listened. I thought, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then I went on and I thought, if that employer only knew that that t-shirt was his walking billboard. True story. 2 weeks later, I'm at Walmart again, and here is a staff member of a nursing home in the checkout line behind me with the t-shirt on with the nursing home on it. And I thought, I just have to do this. So I told her, I said, oh, saw your t-shirt, noticed you work at a nursing home. And she said, yeah. She said, I just love my people. She said, I wasn't even working today. She said, but I went out to the nursing home because my little favorite, say her name's Helen, she wasn't doing very well yesterday. And I had been so worried about her. I just had to go out there and check on her to make sure she was all right. And she told me all about her heart and passion for her job. And she loves the people she serves. And I told her, I said, my goodness, you are such an asset to this profession. Thank you for all you do. So one of the challenges and goals for each one of you is when your staff leave your facility every day, and whether they have their t-shirt on or not, what kind of a billboard are they going to be? Are they going to improve the public's perception of long-term care, or are they going to leave there and be a part of the problem? You know, I always told my kids, you're either a part of the solution or a part of the problem. So when anything's broken, you know, if you don't fix it, you own that problem. You are a part of that problem. And that's something good to keep in mind with your staff. Bring in your management team. You're going to fly together and you're going to die together. And you know what? A lot of times there will be a problem. And very rarely is it just one person's problem. It might be a process problem. It might be a policy and procedure problem. It might be a lack of education problem. But at the end of the day, the administrator's license is on the wall. So that's why we all work together to say, you know, stand-up huddle team meetings every day are very good. When I worked at the nursing home, I came in every day, but I was that crazy woman. I came in every day at 6:30. We had the regular shifts, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. I came in every day at 6:30 in the morning. Why? because I got to hear from the 11 to 7 shift. It was 2 to 5 minutes. What went on? What do I need to know? Did someone fall during the night? Did someone's family member call and we were upset about something? Did someone die? Because how bad would it be if I didn't know if one of those residents died and the other sister, the evil sister, not the good sister, called, wanted to know how her mom was doing? I said, well, I guess all right. I haven't, don't know anything. And find out she died during the night. So I always got report when I got there. And then I always stayed past 3 because that was the daily shift. And even though I was there, sometimes things go on. So I always did a little huddle. Hey, what, anything I need to know about when the 3 to 11 shift came on. So I really got to touch all 3 shifts and know what was going on. Now here's another little helpful hint. I'm giving you a lot of hits at once, and usually I intersperse them. But I just thought about this one. I have a legal pad, and I put it on the side of my desk. And anytime anyone had a problem, I wrote it down. Staff problem, food problem, laundry problem, because sometimes the washers and dryers literally eat the clothes. They just disappear. They're gone. And, a family member is going to come in and say, I bought my mom that brand new sweater. Where is it? So I don't know, but I'm going to find out about that sweater. So I'd write it down. And when it was completely resolved, I put an X on it. It was done. And when that whole page was done, I tore it off and I always filed it and dated it. You know why? A family member said, I told you about this, you didn't resolve it. Oh yeah, the sweater, I wrote it down, this date you told me about it, this date we found that sweater, and I dated it again. One of the best things I can tell you is, I do this to this day. Every time I pay a bill, I initial it and I put the date on it. So I know when it was paid. If I die tomorrow, everyone's gonna know I paid that bill. My initials were on it and dated it. I learned that from the nursing home. So why am I telling you about this legal pad? There was a woman that was living in a nursing home, and she told her daughter, she said, when they give me my bath, they really rush me. I know the girls are busy, but they really rush me and I get nervous. So the daughter told the nurse aide, she said, mom feels a little rushed at bath time. She doesn't enjoy her bath as much as she used to. Nurse aide, I'll take care of that. Well, the nursing home resident tells the daughter again, they're still rushing. Nothing's changed. Or the daughter maybe asked her, how are things? Oh, still the same. The daughter goes to the charge nurse and says, I said something to the nurse aide, but mom, we don't want to rock the boat. They all say that. They're afraid. But mom really feels rushed. Oh, we'll take care of that. Nothing changed. Nothing changed. The daughter asked the resident. She said, nothing's changed. They go to the DON. Mom really feels rushed. We talked to the charge nurse and the nurse aide. Nobody did anything. The DON, I am so sorry. I'm on it. I'll take care of it. Nothing changed. The administrator, the family member goes to the administrator, writes a formal letter to the administrator and says, I've gone through these channels and haven't heard anything. And the administrator saw them in the hallway and said, I got your letter. I'm on it. I'll take care of that. Nothing changed. You know what happened with that situation? They had 5 chances to address it. They would have written it on the pad. They would have seen it and maybe done something. Finally, the family went to the health department. The health department, they issued a complaint. The health department came out and cited an IJ, because they had 5 times that resident, that's a form of abuse. When they're saying, I don't feel comfortable, I feel rushed, they've got an IJ over that. They were fined, they had an IJ on their record for something as simple as if the nurse aide would have addressed it, or the charge nurse, or the DON, or the administrator. Nobody did. So public's perception, I get off track, but I'll get back. Long-term care. So my grandfather on the other side of the family, 10 children on that side. So I've got a huge family. My grandfather started to fail. My grandmother was his caregiver, and he was failing too. And we're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Then my grandmother dies. And we're like, what are we going to do with my grandfather? Family comes together. They said, we're going to hire 2 people. One 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, 24 hours a day, 2 days a week for the other one. He can stay in his own home. There's a car. She could drive him to Brahms. He can watch TV. She'll cook good meals for him. Everyone said, perfect situation. Well, my grandfather's a real outgoing guy, loved to talk, loved people. So anyway, one day the caregiver was in the kitchen doing cooking lunch, and there was snow on the ground, freezing cold outside. The house he lived in was on a state highway. She couldn't find him when she went in to tell him that it was time for lunch. She looks out this big picture window, and my grandfather is standing in the front yard, completely naked, waving at cars going by. They're like, oh my gosh. They get him in, they have a family meeting, and they tell him, you do that one more time, we're going to send you to the nursing home, the big threat, the evil nursing home. 2 days later, she cooks lunch, can't find him. He's in the front yard, stark naked, waving at the cars going by. So the family got together and said, we're not going to send him to the nursing home, but we're going to threaten him that we're going to put him in that bad place. And so they called the nursing home, got it all set up. He was going to go Friday through Monday, and then they were going to pick him up, Friday through Sunday, pick him up Sunday night and think that that would whip him into shape. Well, my grandfather got there on Friday, and when they went to pick him up on Sunday night, he was the greeter at the door. He was greeting everybody because he was so isolated in his home. He was lonely, depressed, withdrawn. And then during mealtime, he was going around talking to everybody. He made 110 new friends. He loved that nursing home. And my grandfather ended up staying there until he died. He stayed there 2.5 years. And when he died, on the front row at the church were the caregivers. The family sat behind the caregivers because those caregivers were his important best friends, the people that gave him a life again at the end of his life. So the public's perception of long-term care, it's up to us to tell that story because nursing homes are not a place to go and die. They're a place where people go to live. One time I had a conversation with a nursing home administrator, and he said, people just go to nursing homes to die. And I said, they do not. And he said, they do too. They go there and they die. And I said, no, they don't go there to die. They go there to live the rest of their life. If they were just going there to die, then they could die at home then. There's lots of ways they could die. They're going there to live the rest of their life. And that's our job, is to give them a life worth living. So always remember that. Always remember that. That's our job. Building safety into process of care is a more effective way to reduce errors. The focus must shift from blaming individuals for past errors to preventing future errors. This is from the Institute of Medicine. So you're thinking, what does that have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. Because remember what I said? That whenever you get your license, you hang it on the wall, and you can blame everyone all you want, but at the end of the day, it's your license. But you know what? You don't know everything there is to know about nursing. That's why you're going to have open, honest communication, stand-up meetings with people, and you're going to figure out how you're going to move forward together. And when there is a problem, the worst thing you can do is say, Susie, that's on you. That was you. You know what? You fly together and you die together. You're going to rise up together. You're going to say, how did this happen? What were our checks and balances? And how can we avoid doing that again? Whenever in this job, I visit a lot of nursing homes. If I'm out there going to visit a nursing home and I drive through a town with a nursing home, I'll stop and visit. I do it all the time. I visited nursing homes all over this whole state. I went into this nursing home that I actually knew a woman that lived at. And I said, can I see the administrator? Because I really didn't know him. And she said, just a second. So she sent me to another office and I said, could I see this administrator? She goes, yeah, just a second. So then I go back to another desk and see his assistant. And I said, can I see the administrator? Sure, just a second. Then I go back to his office. So you see layers. Layer, one office to another office to another office to his office. He was pretty guarded, secluded back there. So I said, I just want to introduce myself, and I came to see Sally, I'll call her. And I said, how's she doing? He said, I don't know all these residents here. I just see the census list. I just do, you know. I said, oh, well, she's been here for about 6 or 7 years. Oh, didn't apologize, didn't know the resident, nothing. And his office was in the back. And I'll tell you, sometimes you'll think you'll get a lot accomplished back there. And sometimes you're going to have to go to that office and have your quiet time to work on a 2567 plan of correction, or do your billing. To be a successful administrator, one of the most important things you need to know who your residents are. You need to know who your staff is, and you need to know what's going on. You really need to know what's going on. That will help you more than anything. When I started my first job as a nursing home administrator, I walked in and there was a charge nurse that had been there 18 years. And I said, so I really just want to get to know the staff and the residents. She said, okay. So she took me around the building and we walked into each of the rooms and I introduced myself to the resident and told him who I was. And I wanted to just learn a little bit about him. Then we get to this one room and she goes, oh, don't go in there. I said, why? It's bad. It's real bad. And I said, is there a resident in there? She said, yeah, there's a resident in there. She said, but he's really bad. I said, well, if he's in there and he's one of my residents, I need to know what's going on. And I went in there and there was a man that had decubitus ulcers that if I put my fingers in his hips and turned him, I wouldn't have touched flesh. He had 2 holes in it. And I said, you know what? We are calling the hospital right now and transferring him to the hospital immediately. And they did. And keep in mind, this was in the early 90s. So much has changed since then. I always say that the old nursing homes and the new long-term care profession. And they transferred him to the hospital and he died shortly thereafter. But you know what? The nurse was telling me I didn't even need to know who that resident was. And that was one of my residents. You know, you need to know your residents, because here's a really good hint. If families trust you, you're going to have fewer complaints, fewer survey problems, and you're going to have more referrals if they trust you and know you're doing what's in the best interest. And that always boils down to ethics. It boils down to your ethical standards of behavior. You know, now we're going to transition into the code of ethics. So everything that I'm going to go over now is in the code of ethics for long-term care. And no matter where you go after this, some of you might end up someday at an assisted living or an adult day or somewhere anywhere. Always remember, if you keep these principles first and foremost, you will be a success. There has been a public outcry for accountability. How do we know that? Read the paper and listen to the news. Unfortunately, the one news story that there's 10,000 good stories that are going on every single day about people's lives change for the better because of the nursing home. So we must create a climate of trust. Do your residents trust you? Do they fear you? Or do they trust you? Do your families trust you? And the other thing is, does your staff trust you? You know what? Does your staff trust you that you're going to schedule enough people? There are some facilities that don't schedule enough people because they know they don't have the staff. So they don't even staff enough people to begin with. They might meet that bare minimum staffing ratio required, but that any health department surveyor will tell you probably over 95% of the people in our nursing homes would be considered heavy care or total care, which means the health department has gone on record to say that the staffing level that would be required to meet the care needs of those residents in nursing homes is between 3.0 and 3.5 hours per resident day. There's some nursing homes that have 5 and 6 hours of direct care staff per resident day. It's all based on the acuity level of your residents. So we have to create a climate of trust. And if your staff trusts you, then you know what? They're going to be there for you. So here's what I did when I took over this nursing home. It wasn't a good picture. The staff were burned out. They, been through a lot. It was a mess. They had a really bad survey. It was a mess. So I took over this home. It was actually a decertified home as my first job. And someone said, what in the world did you do that for? And I said, I really thought it'd be a really great way to learn. Now, in this day and age, would you take over the home that's getting ready to be shut down, decertified? I don't know. But I learned a lot. I'll tell you, I learned a lot. But here's what I did first. I had to build that trust. So I met all the residents, and I sent a letter to all the families. But I had to get trust with those staff, because if I didn't have staff, I wasn't going to have anyone to do the job. So here's what I did. One day I came in and I worked in laundry. This was early on. Why? Because the complaints, they were doing people's laundry, just passing it out to people. They were like, oh, looks like this would fit her, fit it. They were not distributing the laundry based on whose laundry it was. So I thought, we have to have a plan. We can cut our complaints by a third if we just get rid of the laundry complaints. So I wore some more casual clothes, my tennis shoes, and I walked in one day and the staff said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to work in laundry. They said, really? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm going to work in laundry. We've got to get a better system. We have too many clothes getting lost or melting in the dryer, because they ran the dryer twice. They didn't want to have to fold the clothes, so they punched it again so the next shift would have to do the laundry. So I worked in laundry for 3 days. And at the end of that, we developed an amazing system. The laundry, I worked side by side with them, and they're like, you know, we don't have a problem with her. She's going to be a good administrator. They thought, you know, I'm willing to work with them. So a few days later, I end up and this is before the safe serve requirements and stuff. I go and I work in dietary. They said, oh, what are you doing in here? I said, oh, I just think we're going to fine tune some things. That's back when they had the school trays, those compartmentalized trays. They took a big Sharpie and they wrote their name on them. They wrote their diet on them. We just passed those trays. I said, you know, there has to be a better way to do this. Half the people were getting a tray of cold food, completely cold food. I said, why are we serving up everything at once? And it sits there an hour, and then we're serving it, and then we have to chart that no one ate their lunch. I said, so we fixed that. And then one day I came in, and they said, well, what are you doing now? I worked in housekeeping. That was a big one. There was, I told one of my housekeepers, I said, Mark, I said, be sure to go clean Mrs. So-and-so's room because her family's coming, like from out of state. He said, I'm on it. I just cleaned that room. I said, well, I was just in that room. And he said, well, I just cleaned it. I said, well, let's go look. My perception of clean and Mark's perception of clean were this far apart. I mean, there were like some Kleenexes underneath the bed. It hadn't been swept underneath the bed, and there were like fur balls underneath there. And I mean, it dusty, the blinds. And I said, so let's clean. So I put on my casual clothes and my tennis shoes, and I worked in housekeeping for 3 days because I wanted to know what the expectation was. If I wrote them up because they didn't clean and they said, I cleaned and she wrote me up, well, if they didn't know what clean was, they didn't know what the expectation was. So anyway, that went on. I worked outside in the flower beds. We got that place whipped into shape. And so the staff loved it. They're like, where's she going to end up next? But every department I went into, it's kind of like the light bulb went on. They knew what the expectation was. They cared a little bit more about their job. They realized how important their job was. So at in service, they said, so where are you going next? Where are you going next? Where are you going to show up? And I said, well, that's all I'm going to do. And they said, what do you mean? I said, the only department I haven't been in is the nursing department. And I said, you know, the CNAs, because most people think nurse aides, you know, kind of like the bottom of the food chain. I said, you know, the nurse aides? No, I said, you know, our certified nurse aides? I said, they're above me. They have credentials I don't have. I cannot do their job. I can't even show them a better way because I haven't been through their training. And the whole room fell silent immediately. And everyone in that room, the activity directors, the maintenance people, the dining services, every one of them really thought a little bit more about those nurse aides then. A little bit higher level of respect, a little bit better understanding about what they did and their important role in long-term care. So I helped try to create a climate of trust. trust. I'm willing to do it. I'll work beside you. We're gonna rise together. We're gonna fall together, and change the negative image. That's something we all have to do. So as far as a public outcry for accountability, back in 2004, or 2003 really, I went to my board of directors and I said, we have to change this broken system in long-term care. And every nursing home got paid the same amount. Back then, I think it was $83, $83.46 or something. Some facilities were spending $120 a day to take care of those people, but they got paid $83. Other people were spending $60 a day. They got paid $83. There was no incentive for anyone to staff better, provide better wages, or provide better care. So I said, I want to introduce a bill that will change long-term care. And I won't tell you a lot about that, but it was Senate Bill 1622. It's still in existence today, and it's the way every single nursing home is reimbursed. So here's what you need to know about this. This is about our accountability. Every single nursing home was getting paid at the time, I want to say, what was it, $101 or something. And I said in the bill, it says any new money is going to be allocated 70-30. 70% of all new funds from now on, every rate increase is going to go into staffing, and 30% is going to go into fixed costs. So everybody is going to get that same $101. And of the new money, say it's $10 a day, some people are going to get $70 and some people are going to get $30. Some people are going to get $8, but everyone's going to get this $3 over here. But on the 70%, it's facility specific rates. So say there's $10 and 30% of it goes to the fixed cost. That's to cover your utilities, your food costs, your maintenance costs. Everybody gets the same because your food cost should be basically about the same, your utilities. So that pool that goes into the 70% pot is allocated on a facility specific basis based on your direct care expenditures. So that's what you spend for your direct care staff in wages, benefits, and training. Today, some facilities get paid $28 more per resident per day of how they're spending money. Here's one of the biggest take homes of this presentation today. So let's say it's $30 a day and you have 100 residents, that's $3,000 a day. And you have 30 days, that's $90,000 a month. That's $90,000 a month. Some facilities are getting paid $50,000 more a month than others because of their direct care component. So it's $30 is the difference. So some facilities are getting paid $90,000 more a month than someone else. So I'll give you a little hint. If you take care of your staff, if you provide what benefits they want and need, and if you provide a little bit better wage, then you are going to get that more money back in that 70-30 reimbursement. But you know the best part about that is there are some facilities that have a turnover rate of 100%, 200%. The average cost of turnover of a nurse aide is $5,000. You turn over 100 nurse aides in 6 months, run the numbers. So if you pay a little bit more and have a little bit better benefits, every time you reduce that turnover, that's money directly to your bottom line. So if you spend a little more on the 70-30, reduce turnover, you're going to make money on your higher rate. You're going to make money in what you save on your turnover. You're going to save both ways. Every year we do a turnover calculation with our member communities. And there isn't one done statewide, but the projection on the state turnover is 100 to 150%. We have members in our organization whose turnover this last time, 23%, 46%, 52%. Compare that to a facility that has 100% turnover or 200. They're getting a double payday up here and down here. So think about that, and we can talk more about that if you want more questions about that. But the other thing I want to tell you about, in 2019, we got the largest Medicaid rate increase in the history of the Medicaid program. You know why? I brought in a group of advocates and I said, you know what? You all want better staffing. You want better nursing homes. You want better care. But the only way we're going to do that is if we get more money. So we put together this coalition and we went out there and sold that and got, in the history of the state Medicaid program, the largest single Medicaid increase ever, which is really good. I am off. There we go. I don't get to see this. I need a mirror so I can see behind me. Okay, the Affordable Care Act, if you remember, this was passed how many years ago? 11 years ago. And in the Affordable Care Act, everyone thought it was all about health care. It had a very strong component that applies to our long-term care, and it's ethics. It requires, it has a required compliance element, a required compliance personnel, reporting system whereby employees can report violations without fear or retribution, and mandatory annual training. Every time I teach this class, I ask about your ethics advisory group or your ethics policies and procedures. And so don't feel bad. There's facilities that do not have this. So the mandatory compliance is in section 6102 and 6401 and 11281. It requires requirements of a mandatory written compliance and ethics program. Every facility has to have a mandatory written compliance ethics program. You have to effectively prevent and detect criminal, civil, and administrative violations. That means you would even have to report something. I absolutely had to do that one time. I had to report my own facility. Someone in my facility did something that was a reportable incident that I had to turn us in for. If I had not turned us in, I would have been in violation of what this now does, but they still could have come after me because my license was on the wall. So sometimes, what I told you before about taking the high road with the survey agency, always err on the part of being brutally honest and transparent, because they will give you the benefit of the doubt. There have been facilities that doctored medication records, doctor's orders, things like that. Anytime you do anything like that, I promise you, the retaliation for something like that is so much worse than if you reported it on your own. And you have to effectively promote quality of care, and it has to contain the minimum required statutory elements. Here's a helpful hint. When you go into when you're interviewing for a job, and I told you to interview them as much as they interviewed you, ask them about their mission statement and a little bit about the organization and about their policies and procedures and how that process works. Surveyors know when facilities have a policy and procedures manual that's on the shelf that is never looked at. And they'll pull that thing out and they'll know the last time it's been updated. And if it hasn't been updated in the past month because of what's going on with COVID-19, you have some work to do, because there are definite policies and procedures that need to be in there now. So the minimum requirements: implementing written policies, procedures, and standards of conduct, designating a compliance officer and compliance committee for reporting, an alternate method of reporting anonymously, and disciplinary standards that set out consequences for violations. You have to have sufficient resources and authority to the overseer, and do care not to delegate substantial discretionary authority to those who had a propensity to engage in a violation. So how can you delegate the entire authority for your finances to someone that there may not be enough trust in, or there's no checks and balances with that person? And you have to communicate to staff, contracted service providers, and volunteers as annual training is mandatory. So you have to let them know that there is a process for reporting. You have to take reasonable steps to achieve compliance by internal monitoring and auditing. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. If you say, I didn't know that, that's no defense. You have to put in some protections in place to ensure that someone is monitoring this. You have to have consistent enforcement of the program. And after detecting a violation, ensure all reasonable steps are taken to respond and then prevent future violations. So just because you fix the problem, say it's in the accounting department, someone was overcharging a private pay person, what protections did you put in place that it won't happen again? And only if you have 5 or more facilities do you have to have a designated compliance officer. And if you just have one facility, that can be someone else, you know, your office person that would be the compliance officer. So the other thing is requirements of participation. This was the most comprehensive nursing home regulatory change in 25 years. They were implemented in 3 phases, and these are the phases. This guidance has gone out, and we pushed out lots of information. All facilities should be in compliance with this. If you have doubts or need information about this, you can Google requirements of participation from CMS, and I will tell you, huge. We spent, well, it was implemented over 3 years, and it was all hands on deck to be in compliance with all of those new requirements. So compliance and ethics. This is part of the Code of Ethics. It requires the operating organization for each facility to have a program that has established written compliance and ethics standards and policies and procedures capable of reducing the prospect of criminal, civil, and administrative violations. Another part of the Code of Ethics is commitment. Does the organization participate in a quality improvement or accreditation program? This should be the first thing you ask of an organization if you're applying for a job. So what kind of quality improvement programs are you implementing or are you working on? Some people will say, this is the way we've always done it. We just take care of our people. We make sure we cover our bases. But in this day and age, we have a pay for performance program. If you reduce one of 4 quality measures, you can get up to $7.07 per resident per day, in addition to your regular rate. Run the numbers on that alone. There were facilities in the state that got all $7.07. There was a whole group of facilities that got 0, nothing. They didn't achieve any of those. So I'd be saying, you know what? There's all kinds of information out there of how to improve your quality measures. Does the organization have a written code of ethics? If so, how does it guide what the organization does? Make the second round of interviews. Ask them about their policies and procedures. Ask them about their mission, vision, and values. Governance and accountability. What is here we go. What is the organization's mission and what policies and procedures do they have to ensure that all staff members work according to the same beliefs and goals? Who is the owner or board of directors and what is their role in the operations? You probably are wondering why that's important. It's everything. You're putting your license on the line for that owner, and you should have a partnership. You open, honest communication with that owner or board of directors and a shared vision for what you want to accomplish. There was a woman who was a DON at a really good nursing home, and she was a really good DON. And I'm going to tell you, if you have a good DON, you are set. If you have a really good DON, they'll allow you to sleep at night because they'll help take care of things with you. They'll be your best partner in this whole process. So anyway, she left that job because she really wanted to be an administrator. She became an administrator. And she had been through eating alternative training, and she'd done a lot of stuff. And she said, I really just want to go in and have this excellent nursing home. So she interviewed with this company, and she said, I really want to immerse culture change. And the owner goes, yeah, right, okay, whatever. And the Eden principles, oh, okay. So she got hired, and she started. And after about 6 weeks, she got settled in. She started changing things, self-scheduling, consistent assignment. And the owner said, what in the world are you doing? What are you doing? She said, oh no, this is going to help with our turnover. This is going to be good. The staff will like it. He goes, no, I want to know what our staffing is. I want to be able to look at it, and you can't do that. Well, the next thing she tried to do was to do some culture change, some specific hallways, cohorting some of the the residents, you know, the ones that like to stay up late at night, or the ones that are, you know, total care and it really needs to be quiet. He heard about that and said, don't do it, even though she contacted the families agreed and thought it was a great idea. Long story short, 3 or 4 weeks later, there was a parting of the ways. She knew she could never be a good administrator with that owner because he wasn't going to let her do what she needed to do. At first, he used the excuse that it was money. Everything she tried to do cost nothing. There was no financial impact at all. She wanted to improve the home, but he didn't want to get out of that comfort zone. So it's very important you know who you're going to work for. Innovative care and services. How does the organization identify and adopt new care and service practices? Ask them, what have you done differently? How are you in this COVID-19 environment? What is your visitation policy? Are you going with what the state said, or did you develop your own policy? Are you in the right phase, or are you looking at the county map and you're in a different phase? If they don't know any of that stuff, you know, they probably ought to know some of that, because if not, they may dictate how you're going to operate your facility with your license on the wall. Ask them, what's an example of an innovative policy or procedure that they have implemented? And do they collaborate with other organizations? Do they access the QIO's information? Are they a member of an association? Are they looking for innovative practices? What are they doing? You have to know those things, because that could limit you and limit your success as a nursing home administrator. Community involvement. Remember we talked about this? Are volunteers involved in the organization? There was a nursing home, and every month this group of volunteers came in, 20 of them. They visited with the residents. They brought a big cake. They brought punch. They brought diabetic supplies. They brought napkins, cups, plates, everything. And so they had the party. They visited with the residents. It was a good hour, 2 hours. The staff wouldn't even get the residents down there for the party. They wouldn't, no staff was down there to help them, no one. So finally the volunteers said, we're not gonna do this. The facility doesn't care, they're not helping us. So how does that reflect in the community when a big group of volunteers gives up on you because there's not a partnership with the project? What kind of community programs are integrated into the facility? You know, there's schools that come in and the students read to some of the residents in a pre-COVID environment, and hopefully we'll get back to that in a year or two. But there's lots of engagement that could go on, and is the facility taking advantage of any of that? Are residents encouraged to vote, participate in religious services, and continue other lifelong activities that are important to them? What's going on in that facility will tell you a whole lot about the ownership and the personality of that facility. The facility I was in, I had to change it completely because it was in this dark place, and I tried to bring that to life. Continuous quality improvement. This is part of the Code of Ethics. How does the facility evaluate and measure the quality of services and identify the opportunities for improvement? What is their continuous quality improvement plan? What are they doing? Or are they just covering their bases? Human resources. You know, if you told me what is most important, I thought, oh, the nursing facilities, the nursing component is very important. And I will tell you, I'm the biggest advocate of the activity department. You know why? 40% of your referrals come from the family members. And when the residents are happy, the family members are happy. The best way for the residents to be happy, to be honest, some of them don't care if they get their nursing services. They don't care if they were bathed. They don't care about all this stuff. You know what they do care about? They care about life enrichment and engagement. They care about someone talking to them. They care about their bingo. They care about an opportunity to watch a movie, engage with other residents. Put a star by that. If you have an active, really good activity department, you are going to have a great facility. But you have to have the staff to do all of this. So you're HR person, and you might be that HR person. I was the administrator. I was the HR person. I hired everyone because I didn't have the funds to have a separate. I was at a 65 bed home, so we didn't have HR person. I'll tell you, I met a guy, and he was licensed about the same time as me. He was in Missouri, I was in Oklahoma. We both took over decertified facilities. We both had a mountain to climb. And it was like, who's going to survive? Let me tell you about this man. He got to that facility, and within about, a year, I would say, there was a waiting list for his facility. It was a great facility, a great, everything was, he really cleaned it up, did a great job. That wasn't his biggest success story. And I will tell you, this is rarely do you ever hear about this. There was a waiting list to get to work at his facility, a waiting list, because everyone knew he trusted the staff. Everyone was going to have to pull their weight. He would schedule enough people. And there were people there, if someone got sick, you weren't going to have to work on an island. If people didn't show up, you're like, oh, brother, someone shows up. They're not giving us the staff we need. You knew if you worked there that you would have a team around you. And it was truly a team process. Everyone trusted each other. He really did a great job there. That was a huge success story. There are success stories out there all day, everywhere, just like turnover. There was a facility one time, their agency turnover was more than their regular payroll. Do you know what that means? When you're using more agency than your regular payroll, first of all, your staff's productivity is going to be so low because they know that those nurse aides that are working beside them are making double than they are. Sometimes double, yeah, sometimes more. So I always encourage people. This facility came to me and said, help us. And I said, I'll help you under one condition. You have your whole management team there and some direct care staff. And we put together a plan. They were agency free in about 6 months, but they had their turnover manageable within 9 months to 12 months. I said, the best thing you can do is get agency free, even if you have some overtime. I meant overtime. Their overtime was manageable within 9 to 12 months. And in all of this, their turnover became manageable. But so what is the difference in this facility that I told you that has a 23% turnover and one that has, and I knew it, I had a friend at her nursing home, she said our turnover is 202%. So what's the difference in there? Well, some of these principles and practices I'm talking about are that difference. So one of my favorite quotes is by Maya Angelou about your CEU requirement. We did the best we could with what we knew, and when we knew better, we did better. Not just on your CEU requirements, but keep that in mind about everything. Think about your activity director. Leading Age Oklahoma does a really great activity director program. And we had a woman that was trained under another program, and she came back and got retrained underneath our program. And she sat in that room and started crying. I was just like, oh my gosh. So I pulled her aside and I said, is there something wrong? I mean, is there a problem? She said, yeah, there's a problem. For 10 years, I've been working this position and didn't know what I was supposed to be doing for those residents. For 10 years, I've cheated those residents from having an experience of life enrichment and engagement that they were deserving of. So keep that in mind with your other staff too. Are you giving them the resources they need to do a better job? You know the cartoon, that little Energizer Bunny, the batteries run out? That's all of us. And I'm going to tell you as an administrator, there's going to be times your batteries are going to run out. But what are we doing to recharge our batteries? We have to. Leading Age just finished a webinar series, 5 parts, Fearless in the Face of Crisis, that got off the chart reviews. It was all about how to stay sane in this process. And, you know, the COVID and all the pressures and how to really empower your staff and how to develop teamwork and come together and build that successful system. It was really, really great. Were any of you at a facility that got that series, that shared any of it with you? Write this down. Go back to your facility, and I'm not selling this. The webinar series is over, but ask them. Did you participate in the Fearless in the Face of Crisis webinar series? If they did, go in there and there's recorded modules you can access and listen to some of those. It will tell you how to empower your team, grow your heart for the profession. It's really good information. So Fearless in the Face of Crisis. Public trust. At the end of the day of the Code of Ethics, this is one of the most important things. At the end of the day, would a family recommend your facility? If they say yes, you know you're on the right track. Are families content with services? And what do the ombudsman and the ombudsman volunteers think about your facility? So I heard an administrator the other day talk about the ombudsman program. They just turn us in. They just turn us in. We don't like them. We don't talk to them. We don't work with them. Here's your latest, greatest statistic. Less than 1% of all the ombudsman complaints that were received, like if they get receive a referral and the ombudsman checks it out, less than 1% of those are turned over to the health department for review to even see if something should be done. So the ombudsman can really be your best friend, because what do? They visit with the residents. They reassure them. They come to you and say, Mrs. Jones, all she wants is for someone to read to her once a day. If you could do that, you'd have a happy resident there. And it's really some good things to help you and direct your efforts. Trust. You have to build trust for more reasons than one. You have to build trust with residents, clients, and families. Why? The residents don't trust you. They're going to tell their families. And we know that 40% of referrals come from families. And that's going to hurt you there. But that's also where lawsuits come from. I can tell you story after story about facilities where there was an issue where the facility fell short and there was a death, a fall, a tragic event that could have ended up in a lawsuit. And I said, oh, is the family going to sue you? No. You know why? They knew that it was an element of human error, and they trusted that the facility was doing the best that they could. So if you get that trust, you're going to be at the benefit of the doubt for a lawsuit. And I'll tell you that all day, every day, because I've talked to families and they'll call me and they'll say this. I said, one time as a friend of mine, I said, are you going to sue the facility? No, I knew that they did the best they could. Everyone makes mistakes. There's always going to be that element of human error. And so when I told you to err on the part of owning those mistakes and working through them, just like me, I literally faxed in a report, because that's what we faxed it. When I was an administrator, we didn't have email. I faxed in a report on my facility, but it was something, I didn't do it, but it was done at my facility with my license on the wall. So I in essence turned myself in. And the health department said, okay, let's work through this. And it could have been really bad, but it wasn't. But I handled it the right way. There was a woman one time that was raped in a facility. It was a horrible, horrible incident. And the facility found out about it, immediately called the police, immediately issued an incident report to the health department, contacted them, did everything. And the facility had a little exposure there. And so I asked him, I said, how bad was it? I didn't do anything. I said, they didn't? No, because we did everything we could. We turned around, we fixed the little problem, we reported everything, we owned it, we did everything we could. So keep that in mind. It's a huge success story. So trust with your employees. If your employees do not trust you, you have nothing. You know what? You have to trust that they're going to show up. They're going to have to trust that when they're there, that if they're rushing a person with a bath, that if you tell them about it, they're going to change those behaviors. But I'm going to flip that too. They have to trust you. If they come to you and say, we don't have supplies, or you're not, when you put out the schedule, there weren't enough people when you put the schedule out. So if you want a successful organization, trust is just key. Owners and board members, you have to have trust that they're going to let you do what you need to do. And that, one time there was a facility that The administrator retired and left. They hired a new administrator. The administrator came in and he put together the financials and thought, gosh, something's not right. And so they had a board meeting and he said, something's just not right. I'm trying to figure this out. Well, within 2 weeks, he realized that that facility had not been paying withholding taxes for a year and a half. And that the administrator in the accounting program, there were 2 sets of books. One that just deleted that, and so it showed that they had a bottom line. The other was the real books that showed they owed hundreds of thousands of dollars in payroll withholding. Do you know what happened? When you don't pay payroll withholding for a year and a half, you have back taxes, penalty, interest, everything. They shut down that building because of what that one administrator did, and 42 people lost their home. And every family member in that community, you know, I told you about the community involvement, the importance of the community. They let that community down. It was the only nursing home in that community. So all the families then had to drive 20 and 30 miles away. And those people lost, like I said, lost their homes. So trust is so important. Media. So I'll tell you about the media. Sometimes you can't trust the media. Sometimes they don't trust us. One of the policies you absolutely have to have is a media policy. And a great helpful hint that I give you, you designate one person and one person only. And if there is a fire, if there's an elopement or whatever, and the media contacts you, say, Mary Brinkley's our media contact, you can get in touch with her and deal with it from there. When they come up, and you've probably seen it on the news, the staff are leaving from their shift. Hey, come over here. There was a fire. Do you know if they were, oh my gosh, they used that crock pot for activities, melting the wax. We kept saying something bad's going to happen. That stuff like that's been on the news. You designate one person and nobody can speak for the facility. Nobody can speak for the facility. In fact, I know facilities that have a policy and they've written it in there. If at any time any unauthorized person speaks to the media, you will be terminated immediately. And it's really not, we're going to just hide everything because they can request public records. They'll find out what happened. It's just important to control the process. Very important. And policymakers. I go to the Capitol a lot, and people have been up there and said, hey, you know, we need to do this. Well, legislators call me and say, you know, the 4-year degree example. They'll call me and say, is this really a good idea? They've told me they, you know, that we absolutely have to do this, and everyone's on board with this. And I'll say, well, in my opinion, no, it's not a good idea. It reduces our pool and the reasons why. So we have to build trust with legislators. So when you are calling, and I hope we'll talk about that this afternoon, I hope you'll be an active advocate for long-term care. And I'm going to teach you how to do that. But you have to be honest and you have to be forthcoming with information, because if you aren't truthful with a policymaker, we will really have problems. Where to begin? Leadership. You have to lead by example. I can't stress this enough. That staff, they watch you. They know who you talk to. They know who you're shaking your head. They know if you've given someone a raise. They know why you fired someone. If you think it's going to be kept quiet, it will never be kept quiet. So you have to lead by example. And if someone's terminated, you can say, you know, we don't tolerate this kind of behavior or whatever. And we're going to talk just a little bit about ways to resolve ethical issues. So you have to have commitment. I can't tell you how many times I've had to call someone back. They've been registering for a seminar, and I'll call them back and I'll say, hey, is Susie Smith there? That's the administrator. She doesn't ever show up to about 11 o'clock. You better hurry up and call before 1 because she leaves by 1 o'clock. They don't know if I'm not a surveyor, a family member, the bank that they owe money to. So you really have to have the commitment of your staff and everyone to do the right thing. You have to have buy-in, and they have to respect the process. They have to respect the process, and so do you. Because you know what? I've told you before, you cannot do it alone. So I love this. To the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. I toss these things in every once in a while because we have to have the heart for this job, and this is going to help you realize how important this job is. I walked into a facility, and it was one of those days, I was just walking by a room, and there was a woman in there. She had her hair done. She had her dress on. She looked so nice and makeup on. And I said, hi. I said, are you expecting a visitor? And she looked at me sharp. I mean, didn't skip a beat. She goes, and we all forget what day it is. When you're on a vacation, sometimes in COVID, I forget what day it is. And she looked at me and she goes, is today Friday? And I said, no, today's Thursday. She goes, oh, darn. I thought today was the day I got a visitor. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I don't have any family. When my sister died, they made me move closer to the attorney that is handling our trust. And so I had to move to this new nursing home. She'd been there 4 or 5 years. She was uprooted from everyone she knew in the place she called home, and no one knew her. She said, I don't have any visitors. So they assigned me a person once a week to come by and say hi. She said, sometimes I get someone good and they'll spend a few minutes with me and ask me, they usually ask me the same questions. What did you do when you worked? Did you have any children? You know, have you lived in this town your whole life? She said, but that's all right. It's good to have someone to talk to. She said, you're not that person? I said, no, but I visited with her. Then I went on. So remember, to the world, you may be one person, but to one person, you may be the world. So going back to your activity program, it's all these people have. If they had their choice, you get 6 hours of care a day. How do you want it? They'd probably say, well, 30 minutes of it needs to be drop off a tray of food, you know, and the rest of it, give me someone to talk to, an activity, some social engagement or something. They don't care if they get nursing interventions. They might care if they get their pain pills, if they're in real pain, but the rest of that, they don't care. They want someone to be there for them. So finances, very important. This is your balancing act. There is a direct correlation between staff satisfaction and resident satisfaction. So I'm going to give you this thing. If the residents are happy, the families are going to be happy. Families are going to be happy. You're going to get more referrals and you're going to get more residents. But you know what comes on the front end of that is your staff. Because if your staff are happy, your residents are going to be happy. If the residents are happy, the families are going to be happy. Families are going to be happy. You're going to have more residents. And then you're going to have more money. Then you have more money. I told you 70-30. Take care of that staff, reduce turnover. You have more money to pay that staff and you have better outcomes. Then you get to pay for performance. So you can actually capture more of the 70% part of the piece of pie. You can capture the pay for performance and you can fill up your building. You can have a higher census. Just think of a big circle. You're always going to have to balance revenue and expenses, and there is a cost to quality. So if you start cutting back on staffing, staff aren't going to be happy. Residents aren't going to be happy. Families aren't going to be happy. Referrals are going to be down. And you know what happens when you cut back on the cost of, there's a cost to the quality, and you're probably going to have a bad survey. It's another circle. It just goes in this circle. And there are ways to do that. There was a facility that did this incontinence management program. They figured out how many minutes they were spending on incontinence. How much of your staff time do you spend on incontinence? Changing beds, toileting people, changing people, bathing people, everything. So they said, we're going to make this investment. They saved $300,000 the first year by managing incontinence better. So that goes back to what kind of innovative programs are we doing? Think what you can do with $300,000. Pay your staff a little bit more and bring a better bottom line to your owner, or in this day and age, have survival for some facilities. But it can be done. It can be done. But you're going to always have to balance that finance, and that's going to be hard because when your census goes down, all of a sudden you're going to look at your bottom line and say, we have to cut expenses. We have to cut expenses. Be careful where you cut those expenses. I tell everyone, if you don't bid out your food program, your medical supply program, everything, every 2 years, you're leaving money on the table. We know of organizations that have had double digits, saved double digits on group purchasing through their food costs and medical supply companies. So there's ways you watch all that money. You watch every penny, because the pennies add up to dollars and the dollars add up to tens of thousands. So responsibility. Residents are entrusted to your care. You must abide by laws and regulations for the profession. You must perform duties with integrity, which will earn the confidence, trust, and respect of the general public. And you must maintain confidentiality for personal health and financial information. In the Code of Ethics, this is your responsibility. And this is another thing I love. Are you talking to me? What I know I have lived. Every wrinkle tells a gain or loss, a triumph or tragedy. I have not stopped needing or wanting. I will never stop growing or giving. I will not go quietly or gently. I should not be underestimated. I will not be ignored. What you are, I was. What I am, you will be. Remember and anticipate. Assume nothing. Expect anything. Listen, learn, then we can talk. This is the picture of the old lady, but see, in the reflection, it's this young person. Because this person's telling you, I have the wisdom. I know if you listen to me. And just remember that. So many times with these residents, if we just listen to what they need and give them that time. Please look at my eyes. I am someone's mother or father. I was a teacher, doctor, or skilled laborer, a contractor to society. My life is filled with experiences. I have gained much and given back more. The time has come that I can no longer give. I shall be a receiver. Please don't ignore me. I need your eyes, your hands, and your heart to care for me. I have more to live, wisdom to share. There are lessons to learn. Don't forget me. I need you. Someday you will need. I hope you are not forgotten. Do you know why this is special to me? When I started my job as a nursing home administrator, there was a person there, and her name was Mary, a resident. And every time one of the staff members tried to help Mary, she would say, no, go help Mr. So-and-so. Or I heard so-and-so calling out, go see what they need. She did that all day, every day. And I finally went down to her and I said, Mary, I need to talk to you. I said, Mary, you're a resident here just like all of the other residents. And it's my responsibility to make sure everybody is taken care of. Everybody's cared for. So when the nurse aide comes in, you have to let them take care of you. You can't be sending them down the hall. So I talked to this charge nurse and I said, why won't they let Mary help her? And she said, well, Mary worked here as a nurse aide for 42 years. On a Friday, they had a retirement party for her. How many people work 42 years as a nurse aide? Really, wouldn't you like to have about 40 or 50 of those? Anyway, she retired and over the weekend had a spell of illness. On Monday, she was admitted as a resident at that facility. And that's why she wouldn't let anyone help her. Because as a nurse aide, she knew what the needs are and how many needs there were. Expectation. You must maintain competencies necessary to effectively perform responsibilities. The I didn't know only will get you so far. Go back to your CEU requirements and your responsibility to stay updated. You have to enhance knowledge and expertise through professional development. You shall not misrepresent qualifications, education, experience, or affiliations, and you shall not perform services other than those qualified to perform. That's kind of like what I told the CNAs when they did that. I said, you know, I can't do your job. Sometimes the administrators have jumped in there and done things, but that's a dangerous road. Professionalism. There has to be a fair resolution to disputes. You have to disclose to the governing body or authority any actual or potential circumstance that could adversely affect the facility. You will have that responsibility if you know something's wrong to report it. And you shall not participate in any activities that would adversely affect the facility. Just like I told you about the resident, there was about the administrator before that wasn't doing the withholding taxes, but there was an administrator that the Little League team needed money for uniforms, and they were going to do some fundraisers, but they found out in order to get the uniforms in time, they had to go in and order them, and they didn't have time to do that fundraiser yet, so the administrator borrowed all the money out of the trust fund, knowing she would just pay it back after they had the fundraiser. They had the trust fund audited and the money was gone. The administrator was fired and lost her license. So there are no short-term loans with the trust fund. Responsibility. You shall not defend, support, or ignore unethical conduct perpetrated by colleagues or peers. You know what? This is a horrible thing, and I took it out of my notes, and then I put it back in, and I took it back out. I put it back in, and I took it back out. One time there was an administrator that saw a staff member raping a staff, one of the residents. And you know what she said? And the least you could do is shut the door. And she shut the door. Is that unconscionable to even think about that? Well, needless to say, another staff member found out about it, turned it in. They filed charges against the administrator. It became very ugly. It's really unbelievable to think about that some people would do things like that. And I thought maybe they didn't hear the ethical presentation at the Administrators University. I don't know. But you always have to remember what goes on under the license is a responsibility of the person who owns the license. When I started my job as that, there was that charge nurse that worked 16 years at the facility. And so, of course, I was a new administrator, and she really wanted to get in good with me. She said, you know what? I know everything about this facility. You need to know anything, you just ask me and I'll help you. And I thought, oh, I wrote her name down. I thought, this is good to know. This is my survival. So when I asked her, she took the one that took me around to visit all the residents. And I thought, oh my gosh, thank heavens I have her. She said, I'm so good. I can pass meds by memory. I chart it later. I can pass by memory. I said, really? You don't mark it down when you, no, I don't need to do that. I'm that good. So she finished her shift and I said, oh, by the way, when you get through, I need to talk to you. She came into my office and I said, I'm sorry, I really know you know a lot about this building, but you need to get your things and collect your things. She said, what do you mean? And I said, I'm going to have to terminate you. She had not been, sometimes she would go back a week or 2 weeks later and fill in the medicine, fill in that charts for the meds she's delivered. Do you know what kind of exposure that is? And I said, we cannot do things that way. We cannot operate that way. And there was another charge nurse that was just the best. And after this happened, I brought her in. This other nurse, and you're going to learn this. There's some people that might not be doing things right. And so when a new person comes in and does everything by the book, that makes them look bad. So they try to run them off. Have you ever heard about that? Well, it does happen. So you need people that you can trust, that are going to trust you. Because like I told you, you have to get the right people on the bus, in the right seat on the bus to move the bus forward, okay? The common initial reaction when an error occurs is to find and blame someone. Remember what I just said? Ultimately, you're the one responsible. So whenever there's a problem, it's a lot of times, it's probably not one person. One person might have made the mistake, but sometimes there's other people involved. I walked into a facility one time, and it was one of my ones I drive by. I just walked in, and I knew the administrator, so I thought I would say hi. And here's this living room. Here's the fireplace. Here's the administrator and the DON over here. Here's all the staff standing there staring at the administrator and DON. And the administrator and DON were screaming and yelling at the staff because someone made a mistake. And I walked in, and then they got embarrassed. And so the administrator said, oh, hi, Mary, let's go to my office. And the DON continued what she was doing. How well do you think that went over with the staff? First of all, probably 95% of the staff had nothing to do with the problem, if any of them. But if we blame everybody, is that the proper way? I'm going to tell you the best way to get through to people is to say, we're going to learn a better way. Some things happen. It's been a learning opportunity. We're going to all learn from it so we don't make the mistakes again. Everyone's going to make mistakes, but when we do, we're going to find the mistake, we're going to correct it and move forward in a positive way. Because you know what? The job that you are going to be doing and that your staff are going to be doing, it's a hard job. So the more positive you can make it, the better off you're going to be. If everything in the world is negative, you're going to lose people. But if you can show them a better way, tell them why, and to say, you know what, if we do it a better way and have a better survey, we're all going to have a better life. Ethical practices, commitment. Develop, adhere, and educate all staff on the organization's code of ethics. Everyone has to share the same vision. And I'll tell you, as an administrator, you're going to scramble sometimes. Oh my gosh, I need to do an in-service. What am I going to do? Do it on ethics. And we're going to talk about some ethical situations and what should be done. And you can do some examples. You know, a family member comes in and we didn't do this. What would your response be? Make up some things and see how they respond. To engage your staff in decision-making will go far. You know why? Because they know that they're an important asset to the organization and a valued member of your team. If you never ask them their opinion or don't help let them be a part of the process, then they're just going to be reactive when so many of them have so much to offer. If you want to change processes, get with a bunch of nurse aides. I promise you, they'll tell you a better way that things can be done. So ethical decision making. Could the decision or situation be damaging to someone or some group? Is the decision about more than what is legal or what is most efficient? How do we know what is morally good or morally bad? The reason we go into this is because as an administrator, sometimes you're not going to have the privilege or opportunity to prepare to answer some questions. You're going to have to make an ethical decision. So ethical decision making, there's the utilitarian approach. You do what is right and good for the most people. I'm going to cut my losses. We're going to do this. Okay, 95% of the staff want it this way. That's the way we're going to do it. The rights approach. You do what protects the moral rights of those affected. It doesn't matter if 2/3 of your staff want it done the other way. You're thinking morally and ethically, we have to do it this way. Fairness or justice approach. Do what is fair, treat people equally and consistently. Remember these things. Then when you have to make a big decision and you have your management team in there, you can tell them, well, I took the utilitarian approach with this. But you know what? Really, you're going to explain it to them. We needed to do what was right. The common good approach. Do what contributes to the community as a whole versus the individuals. And the virtue approach. Do what is virtuous. You are the future. Increased standards will elevate the profession. There will be a shortage of administrators. I don't know how many years I've been teaching this module, years and years. Z might be listening now. They haven't thrown me out. I keep coming back. But this has been in here since the first time I taught this. You know why? We did have 1,500 licensed administrators, but we only need 454. And you know what I said? There's going to be a shortage of administrators. You know why? There will always be a shortage. There's always a shortage of good, dedicated, passionate, committed, dedicated administrators. And I'm going to tell you, no one will have more job security than a dedicated, committed nursing home administrator. There's going to be tremendous growth in the long-term care profession. We know that without a doubt. Every single day in Oklahoma, 100 people turn 65. Every day, 100 more people, every day. So that is our growing population. And we're going to need administrators to take care of long-term care. So there is a bright and promising future for committed, ethical administrators. We make a living by what we get. We make a life by what we give. So at the end of the day, everyone goes home after their job. Some people, like I said, some people, to no fault of their own, they might like their job. They worked as in the hotel, and as a clerk in the hotel lobby, and they check people in and check people out, and they visit with people, and they may love their job. But in this profession, there's so much more to it. You have the chance to give back. You have to have the chance to give these people a life. Remember what I said about my discussion with the nursing home administrator, that people go to nursing homes to die? I said, they do not go there to die. they're just saying, okay, I'm going to pack my bag and go to the nursing home and then die. I mean, there's other ways that they could die immediately. They aren't going there. They're packing their bag and they're moving there to live the rest of their life. So we make a life by what we give back. The hardest job I've ever had in my life, my job right now, when I get into the public policy part, there's been some hard parts of that. But my job as a nursing home administrator, it was a tough job. I won't sugarcoat it. Every job's tough if you really want to do it right, though. If you really are committed to your job, it's going to be tough. But I will tell you in the same breath, I've never had a more rewarding job than when I was a nursing home administrator. In fact, when I left that facility, I cannot tell you how many funerals I went to the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The families all called me and said, we really wanted you to be here. We really appreciated how you turned that place around and brought in some people who made a difference and made my mom's life so much better than it was. So if you're looking for internal rewards, you have found the place, because the families, if they know you're trying, they are so appreciative. Now keep in mind, I have to tell you a story about a family member named Mary Ann. Mary Ann came to the nursing facility 3 times a day to visit her mother. She really wanted to make sure everything was perfect with her mother, but she was always telling the staff, take good care of my mom, my mom. I would have to tell the staff, remember, you take care of everybody the same. If you're taking care of someone's mother better than someone else, someone is going to be deprived of some quality of life and someone's going to get a higher quality of life. Well, anyway, Mary Ann was always after me to do more. She thought if she kept pushing me, I would do more to make her mom's life better. So finally I went to her. Oh, she planted Kleenexes under the bed to see if we were cleaning her mom's room, and she did all kinds of things and ordered special things. So finally it got worse than that. She was really pushing. And I said, I don't think we're going to be able to meet your mother's needs here. You know, I have my legal pad here and I have complaints 6 a day from you. And I was real nice about it. I said, every day there's 6 more things. And I said, we're doing the best we can. This is what's possible. But if every day we're adding 6 more complaints, I'm really thinking that you might be, your mother might be better served at another nursing home. She looked at me and said, what do you mean? My mom couldn't get any better care any place other than here. Right now, you do a great job. And I was really nice and honest. I said, but we've got all these complaints. And I mean, it's like a full-time job. I can't keep up with all of your complaints. And if she's that unhappy, and if you're that unhappy, we can't meet her needs. She goes, oh, no, you're doing a fine job. She walked out. That afternoon, she sent in stacks of pizza, had a pizza party for everyone. A few days later, we had cupcakes, and I don't know that there was ever another complaint. She was just trying, you know, you're going to have to learn that there's going to be some personalities you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have a lot of patience, because sometimes people are going to test your patience. But you always have to remember, go back to these ethical practices. If you do what's right and stand up and you know your plan, you're going to be fine. Unethical practices. The Title 19 survey resulted in a 425-page survey report, a 2567. It was 425 pages long. It was this big. It was big. Obtaining a license by fraud or deceit. Yes, that's happened. That conviction of a crime involving narcotics or drug law. Yes, that's happened too. Serving as the administrator of more than one facility. Now keep in mind, someone can do that now with the assistant administrator. This is years and years ago when they just thought the health department wouldn't check. Their name was hanging on the wall of more than one facility. And then failure to submit federal and state withholding payments. Indicators of an ethical environment. Now, this is a slide you might want to keep. My supervisor follows high standards of ethical conduct. My supervisor treats me with respect. My supervisor cares for me as a person. I feel comfortable reporting complaints answer problems to my supervisor. Management cares for our employees. Values are clearly communicated by management, and I am given recognition for my job performance. Copy this. If your staff can say that to you, you will have the best job as an administrator. You know why? Because you have just empowered everyone around you. They're all going to carry their load. You're going to come together as a management team and think outside the box about how you're not just going to keep your head above water, but you're going to do things better too. So this is how you know you've arrived. When I started in this profession, I found this quote, and I actually still have the original copy of it that I had 30 years ago, and it's my favorite. It is the meaning that men attribute to their life. It is their entire system of values that define old age. The reverse applies. By the way in which society behaves towards its old people, it uncovers the naked and often carefully hidden truths about its real principles and aims. So who are we as a society? Who are we as a person if we turn our backs on the most frail, vulnerable people in our population? And you know, there's a lot going on in politics right now. And I have to go to the Capitol, and I'm going to tell you about that as soon as we finish this session and go to break and come back. But we have a moral and ethical responsibility to care for these people, and that's our job. And that will be your job as a nursing home administrator. And your success in your job is how you empower the people around you, because you can't do it by yourself, but as a team, how you meet their needs. And that's what's so important. That's how this job is going to be rewarding. So core leadership characteristics. I'll give you a hint. This is another one of those ones you need to keep. Lead with integrity. Remain close to the environment. Know the facility, the staff, the families, and the residents. Communicate and listen effectively. Address issues, resolve problems with a firm stance. And I don't mean not a bully. That's this end. Too weak is this end. You have to be consistent. You have to be firm, because if you don't, you're going to get swept down here into that she's easy, we'll get to her, or she's so hard, she's going to run off the good people. Admit and learn from your mistakes. One of the best ways to gain respect from everyone around you is to say, I made a mistake, to own that mistake, and work together about how you're not going to make that mistake again. They want, you know, there's administrators I know that will, and they try to push off, you know, that slide about the blame. The reason that's on there is I know of administrators that have put that blame on other people, and people, a DON walked away from a job because she was blamed for something that wasn't her fault. If you want to gain the respect of those around you, if you make that mistake, you own that mistake. Admit and learn from your mistakes. Be a proactive manager, not a reactive manager. You know, listen, learn, anticipate, expect, you know, that's what this is about. If you're just going to sit there and just go along, and as soon as something happens, you're just going to put out fires. You can be proactive on the front end so those fires don't happen. Oh, there will always be fires. But you know what? You can choose to have little fires or big fires by how you handle them, how proactive you are, and how fast you put them out. And empower your staff. You have to listen to them. And you know what? I want to tell you about a woman. She was an oil and gas executive for years, and she was chosen to be the CEO of a life care community. And she knew lots of people. She was really smart, and they thought, we can get someone else to be the administrator. We need you to run this organization. You have the financial expertise. You know people in the community, good community involvement relationships, which is so important. They brought her in. When she came in, she said, you know what, if I'm going to have this job, I want to learn. I need to know about it. I cannot lead if I don't understand it. So she came through Administrators University. She wasn't the administrator, but she wanted to learn. They had another administrator. So years later, I took a group of people to that facility to walk through and to see the building. They'd done some renovations, and I took a group up there to see it. And this is this oil and gas business executive. She was taking us through there. And as she wanted to lead the tour. And as we did, and this was so genuine, you couldn't, You couldn't do this without being genuine the way she pulled it off. But it's just her, and I know her, and I know that it was genuine. So here we are, this group of people walking through the resident's home, and she passed a staff member, and we were just walking, going to the next place. We weren't talking at the time. She leaned over to a staff member and said, Lisa, I noticed you were gone a few days ago. You feeling better again? I knew you were sick. The staff member said, yeah, thanks for asking. I had an earache. Everything's better. Okay, good. Then we were walking a little bit long, and she passed a staff member, and she leaned over to him, and she did it in a very inconspicuous way. Like, we were walking to the next section of the building. She goes, oh, Jenny, she said, I saw you down for vacation next week. Enjoy your time with your family. She said, thanks. It's going to be good to have some time off. This is how she was with her staff. You know why? She wasn't up here and her staff's down there. Keep in mind, when it comes time to have authority and to do your job and stuff, you can't be weak. You have to be strong and firm. But it's her rapport with those staff members. She treated them as just, I want to say friends. There's a fine line where you can be friendly, but you are friendly. You're not like sometimes personal close friends. That really gets hard. But she was a friend to every person in there, and she cared about it, and she knew their names, and she knew something about them. How would you like to be working a shift or two, pulling an extra shift? Someone didn't show up. Will you pull that extra shift? Sure. They don't even know your name. They don't even know you've worked there for 5 years. They don't know anything about you. How much are you going to get out of that person compared to the person that you said, oh, Jenny, hope you enjoy your vacation. Come back refreshed. Enjoy your time off. Jenny comes back. She says, oh, my gosh, someone called in. Jenny's going to say, I'll do that. And I'm going to tell you something. I'm not going to say I was the best administrator or the best leader, because I was always learning. Whenever you stop learning, you stop growing. But I had such a good relationship with every one of my staff. If anyone was sick or called in, I had a list of people, and I said, could you come in? I need you. Sure, I'll be there. One time the girl said, I would. I don't have a way to get there. I said, I'll come pick you up. And I came and picked her up, brought her in. But you know what? There was mutual respect there. They respected me. They knew I had their back. I went up to people before, and I said, you cannot treat my staff that way. That was one of the things Mary Ann did. She wasn't nice to the staff. She was rude to them. She was demanding sometimes. And I said, can't treat my staff that way. And the staff just looked at me like, you do have my back. You do care about me. That really goes far, I promise. So look, it's 2:15. How did that happen that I did it on time? Any questions before we take a break? And I promise you still get your 15 minutes for the break even if you ask a question. So any questions about any of that? I went through a lot. I rambled a lot.